fucking diseased, corrupt temple down on your head. It's gotta be biblical.
Hello again, welcome to a new week on the Patriots Across The Pond with Stu and Elisa. A little bit of Monday Respect show today, and today we have another amazing guest, Max Lowen. I'd just like to read a little intro of Max's website. Max is a survivor of satanic ritual abuse, torture and trafficking who went on to do her healing work and train in trauma and recovery to help other survivors and those trapped in the cycle of violence. Max created a show called Unbroken, where she interviews survivors, truth warriors, healers, and teachers. Max integrates the knowledge she has about the global deep state political machine with issues such as child trafficking and trauma-based mind control to help educate people about the global control structure that keeps humanity trapped in cycles of individual and collective trauma and control. Knowing the truth facilitates finding solutions to the myriad of issues facing humanity. Max shares her knowledge about healing and recovery in an effort to assist individuals in looking inward and doing their shadow work. The restoration of humanity and our beautiful planet begins with each individual healing themselves and stepping into their fullest potential and power. Max, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. Elisa?
Yeah, so I thought maybe, wow, there's a lot you've been through, a lot you've experienced, a lot you know, and then a lot of amazing work that you're doing now. So we usually like to start by just asking our guests, you know, what's your story, your awakening story, etc. I know yours is a lot different than, you know, some of our guests, but we'd love to hear it.
Sure. Yeah. So I, among other things, because it's not my only identity, but I am a survivor of satanic ritual abuse and MK Ultra. I was trafficked, so sex trafficked from infancy up to age 18. And I was tortured in a underground Jesuit facility in Rome. And I was also taken to that facility connected to the subterranean levels of the Vatican. This is way, way, way under the ground, where they have a big altar and they sacrifice babies and small children. It's a big ritual. So they have candles and robes and They will brutalize the child so that the child is in terror, and then they will cut the child open while alive and bleed the child out. They collect the blood in these very ornate chalices and drink it. And there's ceremonies to appease and to Lucifer, or to bring in, it kind of, that energy opens portals and they bring in the demonic into this realm. I was taken to, when I say satanic rituals, there were many different kinds of rituals that involved, sometimes it was a gang rape, sometimes it was like being hung upside down, being tied or nailed to crosses, sort of mock crucifixions. And these elite parties, if you ever saw, it's an older movie, but Eyes Wide Shut, these kinds of balls. The only thing they didn't show in that movie is the cages of children that would have been brought in to be given out as party favors. Sometimes the parties were outdoors on beautiful grounds like mansions, and there were hunting parties. So the kids would be sent out to hide, and then they would be hunted. And at the end of the night, there was always one child sacrifice. So this is the way that the satanic elite behave. The pedophilia sort of undergirds their entire system. And so, unfortunately, I was subject to a lot of that. And in the facility, also to psychological torture, to impossible choices like, you have to push a button that's going to cause this one person to, there was this woman in a room, it was all glass, and so I could see her, and they had put a little bomb in her mouth. And then they had my sibling in another room in the same situation, and I had to choose which one would die. But if I would say, no, I'm not going to choose either, then they would say, well, then we'll kill them both. So being forced, like many other survivors, to make these impossible choices and kill, then told you're a killer, you're just like them. So there's a lot of, it sounds, I know it sounds crazy and like a horror movie, and it truly was. So unfortunately, that's kind of the environment that I was subjected to on and off growing up until I got out when I was 18.
Max, well, first of all, when you talk about this, and of course, Stu and I have heard these stories, but no matter how many times I hear them, I get like a cognitive dissonance. However, how were you involved in this? In other words, like your family, your both parents, like where did it originate from for your involvement from such, from literally, it sounds like birth, right?
Yeah, it was my Italian side of the family. It was an uncle of mine who was part of that facility, some kind of role in there. So he's the one who brought me there. And then, that was connected to the Vatican. They trafficked kids out of the Vatican as well. So unfortunately, through that Italian side of the family. So I did it, my American side, my father's side, there were a political family. So, my grandfather was an ambassador to different presidents of the US, and I have generals and that side of the family. As far as I know, I don't think they were involved, but so I grew up in a lot of different countries moving around, but I would always be taken to Rome every summer and every winter holiday. And when I was 14, my parents divorced, and so we moved to Rome, unfortunately for me, full time for those teenage years. So I was accessed on and off until age 14, and then full time for those 4 years till I was 18.
But I guess the question for just like a normie, right, is why weren't you like if your parents had no ability to protect you, did they do it on the sneak, this uncle? Like, how does that happen? Because I know as a mom, my kids never left my sight. I mean, you know, relatively speaking. They went to school, so we won't get into that. But I'm just saying, like, you're on top of your children, especially when they're babies, right? So how did you get pulled in?
So that's a really good question. I sometimes don't think about that. I guess I just assume that it's obvious, but you're good to ask that. So this is a generational situation. So my mother was done to in this way. Okay. She was very dissociated. She was a multiple, so she had alters. Some of her alters, when she would go in a certain state, she would try and commit suicide, which I saved her from multiple times. Other times there were violent alters, so she would choke me almost to death, and beat me. So in some of the tortures, it involved my mother also being there and me being forced to choose, you know, between myself getting electric shocked or my mother, and I would always choose myself. But she was gone. There was not a real mother there. She was not capable of being a mother in any sense of the word. She barely was hanging on by a thread my entire childhood. And my father, you know, he was also a traumatized individual from childhood, and also then was in Vietnam when he was a Marine for a while. And so he was very dissociated as well. He never went to Italy when we went. And so sometimes what they do is they will program the other parent, they know how to do this to a degree that you don't remember it. So that, you know, my dad could have, I guess, protected me. I know I tried to tell him, but he didn't. I don't know if he was threatened. I don't know if he was put through some programming and just, you know, wasn't really seeing what was happening. But again, it was happening when he wasn't there also, right? So it's very complicated, but when it's generational, it's just done in the family. So no one's going to stop it. Yeah. And many people in the family themselves have been done to, and they're so dissociated that you have a front life. Like my front life was, I went to good private schools and I dressed in nice clothes and I lived in nice homes and I looked normal. But then these things happen at night, on the weekends, on certain, you know, holidays, or even sometimes during the day. So even as a child, I dissociated a lot of what happened. So, which is a mechanism the psyche has to survive. Yes. So a lot of survivors, they will look on the face of it like they had a normal life, but there was nothing normal behind the scenes. And it is intergenerational.
That answered the question, because, you know, it was, when I hear that, then I understand it's just part of the way of living. Yeah, thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, we've heard that from many of our guests as well, don't they? It's like living two lives, basically. So, I mean, what were you yourself sort of like programmed MK Ultra'd, and sort of what is your first memory of all this, if this started from birth, really?
My first few memories that I have are, one, I remember being in a crib, being an infant and crying, and my mother coming and becoming very violent and sort of picking me up by the leg and hitting me against the wall. She was so stressed out. She was so mentally ill. The crying, she couldn't handle it, or she would be very depressed and she wouldn't come. I remember dying at some point, and I remember leaving my body and having this feeling of like a shriek of freedom, of bliss, of just being out, you know, being free, being everywhere. And then I remember coming back into my body and how dark and tight it felt to come in. And I have a very early memory also in the crib of my uncle visiting, which he would visit also wherever I was, and doing this really this ritual where he tied my mother to a chair and he put a mask on her, and then there were these strobe lights and these really jarring sounds, and I would be spun by my ankle. I found out much, much later that spinning is one of the forms of torture. that they use. It's to cause dissociation and disorientation. So those are some of the early memories I have. And I have one very vivid one when I was 2, where I was taken to a church and I was put on the altar in a little toddler-sized coffin. And there was a ritual done, and then the lid was put on, and I was left overnight. There was a cross also burned into my skin. And my family, my mother was there in the audience with her siblings or on the pews, watching. So I remember that, and I was sort of, I guess, inducted into the cult.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you think this happens in many churches, these sorts of things?
Yes, I do. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't good people at the lower levels of churches or any institution on earth. It's just that at the higher levels, they have their people there. And so at the higher levels of the Vatican, they're Luciferian. And so under the cover of churches, under the cover of military bases, medical facilities, underground beneath the UN, beneath The Hague, they have a whole tunnel system where they bring children and they traffic them and they torture them. So this is done by the powerful, the wealthy, the ones who are the global leaders of the planet. Doesn't mean that there aren't good people in religion. It doesn't mean, that at all, but it's not black and white. We've been very mind controlled to be binary. So it's a little more complicated than that. But yes, churches are definitely one place where these things very frequently occur.
So I have an interesting question, and I know your background might be able to answer this, like from a psychological standpoint. If this is being done like in a generational way, these rituals, is it fair to say that the people that are doing it are all have gone through this experience as well? And so it's almost like when you see a father who's, a fireman, and then his sons become firemen, it's like that's what they do. That's like the tradition in the family. So is it fair to say that all these people, even the ones who do this, are fractured?
Yes, I think that's most of the time that is the case. Maybe not always, but most of the time. So in these big name families, the elite families of the world, the royals and the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and the Lees and the Astors and all of these kind of higher up people, they will prepare their children for whatever their future role is, whether it's to be a president or head of the UN or head of a general or whatever they're supposed to do. They groom them towards that role by putting them through this kind of abuse. So they put their own children through this abuse, but in their belief system, this is good, this is necessary, this is what Lucifer wants, and this is to, make you obedient, and Lucifer always requires sacrifice and blood. And so they think this is good. I know that sounds completely insane.
No, but it makes sense. It makes sense. Like you can make sense of it, because I think a lot of people, including myself, have this belief that the children that go through this awful, there's no word for it, experience it's being done by like a normal thinking person, that but from what you're saying, they're all, I don't want to use this word, but they're all victims of carrying on what was done to them. So even though at a certain level, this is a person in power now who has the power over a child or a baby, they themselves went through that as well. So it's not like there's a perpetrator and a victim. It's like they're all victims of this very, I don't know the word to use, system.
Cult. Yeah, I call it a global cult. Yeah, and see, have several degrees in psychology. One thing I learned there is that all perpetrators have been victims, though fortunately not all victims will become perpetrators. So thankfully for that, only a small fraction. So there is still on some level of free will choice, because myself and many other people refused to be loyal to the system, and in fact got out. And although we were forced to do some terrible things, we never wanted to, and we didn't pass it on. However, that it's also true that a lot of these people, yes, they're just repeating what was done to them, and in the way they're raised, they think this is what they need to do.
Yeah.
It's much, much different, but kind of similar to the idea that, spare the rod, spoil the child type mentality, right? So it kind of, yeah.
Okay. I just think that's now, having said all that, I'm not, I'm not trying to put out there that we need to sympathize, send sympathy for these people once they've become perpetrators. But I think it's very important to understand for people that it's not like just some lunatic coming off the street that's deciding to torture an animal or torture a child. It's a system that needs to be, and hopefully is in the process of being taken down and eradicated so that it stops. And I think people sometimes get caught up when you hear these awful stories that it's like, like when you watch in a movie, the evil person just doing this. It's so much bigger and so much more, like you said, they believe what they're doing is what they're supposed to do. Is that kind of a good way of saying it?
I would say, yeah, there are some, on the higher levels who are purely psychopathic, and they, from what I've witnessed at these events, they enjoy inflicting pain and suffering. Yeah. They will dismember children. They will rape them to death. They will do horrifying things that we as humans, like we can't, I can't kill a spider. I trap and release, So it's antithetical to a normal heart, right? But these people are so twisted that some of them actually are purely psychopathic, but I would say the majority are this mix of victim and, repeating the past. And I think you can both have compassion for them, but also hold them accountable. I don't think those are mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
I mean, everything they do is anti-God, isn't it? Everything they do is to taunt God and destroy God and take God out of people's lives. And the closest thing to God is the children, Yes. And if you've heard Lara Logan do that little 3-minute speech about they are a cult, it's really, really touching, but she talks about this in depth. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. It's an FU to God to take, and they will, do this to newborns just out of the womb. So this is a direct affront to God. And that's what Satanism is. It's the inverse of everything organic, everything that's God, everything that's real creation. And Luciferians, the ones who have, they have, like the story of Lucifer, when he fell, he severed himself from that connection to God. And so a lot of these dark players, and the whole system, they don't have organic energy. So we are like the sun. We have our own energy, but they are more like the moon. They need to have our reflected light as their light. So that's Lucifer, the light bearer, is the false light. It's the harvested light. So we're also like batteries to them. We're energy to them. They loosh us. They literally feed off of us, not just physically, but etherically, metaphysically. So they need us. They're parasitic, right? Because they can't create anymore. They've severed that connection, but we still have that co-creative ability with God. So, but they don't. So they also hate us for that reason.
Yeah. It's like, I even talk to people about things like 9/11 and, some of the normies would say, oh, they wouldn't do that, but
oh, yeah, they would.
They come from a position of I wouldn't do that and you wouldn't do that, you know, is how could people do something like that they don't understand? They are the complete opposite of what we are with a good heart, you know?
Yes. And, you know, since you brought that up, that was, of course, an inside job. And so they use trauma-based mind control on individuals such as myself and other survivors. This was perfected by the Jesuits and the Nazis, and they even worked together. Mengele and the Jesuits collaborated. And it's a playbook of how to use trauma to create essentially mind-controlled slaves. Well, they've done this globally as well to all of humanity in a different way. And so 9/11 was basically an MK Ultra or a satanic ritual on the global population. It was done by them. They blew up the towers. They put, you know, bombs in there. They have holographic technology that is beyond what you can imagine. So there were no actual airplanes. That was a hologram. But they destroy this and they call it terrorism. And they say, and they make this the boogeyman, right? So they're creating the boogeyman, and then it's the Hegelian dialectic. They create the problem, they anticipate the fear, and they stoke it, and then they come in with their already pre-packaged solution that they wanted to implement, and they usually have more than one solution. And in this case, it was to pass the Patriot Act, which legalized that's why there's surveillance everywhere. That's why we go through TSA. That's why our data can be taken and harvested. And then it was also to create this, you know, to be able to go into another country that they decided was the bad one and, you know, take their oil and take their infrastructure. It creates a perception that there's now this invisible, terrible thing called terrorism, you know, then later that it gets replaced with a virus. I mean, it's always a boogeyman because it holds us in this trauma, in this fear. And then from there, we're much more easily mind controlled.
Yeah. I was just going to say, because that was the PNAC, wasn't it? The Project for the New American Century. I think I've just Googled it. Yeah, General Wesley Clark was the man that had that piece of paper that said we are going to go in to destroy 7 countries you know, before 9/11 and Patriot Acts, and that came, and that's why all this Middle Eastern war started. Yeah,
and they have to tell us what they're going to do because you know, even though this is an artificial overlaid matrix on God's creation, it's still all of God in the end. And so they have to follow universal law, and we have free will. That's what God gives us all, which has been heavily manipulated against us, but they still have to disclose what they're going to do. So they disclose it in these sneaky ways, like through movies and TV shows. So we think it's just entertainment, or these obscure UN documents, or sometimes, you know, like Bill Gates was on a TED Talk saying he was going to use vaccines to depopulate the world. So, you know, it's always out there. It's just that people can't believe it. And there's a cognitive dissonance. So they might hear something and go, oh, no, you know, that's not. But they're telling, or like when Schwab said, you will own nothing and be happy. You know, that's the next reset plan. So they tell you.
But they also take it, didn't they? If they tell us what they're going to do and we don't say no, we don't know, they take it as a yes, you know, for the mass non-compliance, basically, you know.
Right. So it's called implied consent, and that's actually how the entire legal system operates. Everything is basically a trust or contract. So it's presumed that you're consenting unless you revoke consent and say no, which is very sneaky, right? But so when they said there's mandates to wear a mask, a mandate is an offer as a contract. When people started to wear them and were obedient, that means they accepted that contract. And so then it becomes something that everybody has to do. But if people had said no, or I won't shut down my business, they wouldn't have been able to proceed to the extreme that they did with that particular PSYOP.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was the frustration with so many of us who did not comply, to not understand why other people were. You know, you couldn't, but the fear, like you said, the trauma, the fear, it's the most controlling thing. So I kind of want to pivot, if it's okay.
Can I just ask you one thing quickly before you pivot? Just because we were talking about 9/11, you mentioned Loosh. Now, a lot of people don't know what that term is, but loose is the energy we give off, and they feed off, especially if they're frightening us, keeping us in fear, and we giving off this negative energy, which happened, in 9/11 worldwide. The fear and shock of people was out of this world, wasn't it?
Yes, and that goes into a sort of territory that some people might be uncomfortable with, but there are demonic entities that are discarnate, and they feed off our lower emotions. So that's why they always do things. So most fires, floods, earthquakes, weather events, it's actually deliberately engineered as weather warfare, but then they claim it's climate change, which it's not. But let's say with that, they'll create some event, and then people go into despair and distress and fear and anger, or wars, or anything that they do. Those negative emotions are almost like lapped up by these discarnate entities, and that's what feeds them, and that's their food. Also, everything is frequency, and they want us in survival frequency all the time, because that's where we'll be controlled and obedient and, do what they want, but also where they can feed off of our so-called negative emotions. So it's all very deliberate. And, what's interesting is if we could rise to it, there's what's that guy? David Hawkins has, and many others have, this scale of consciousness, and it has enlightenment and love and peace at the top, and it goes all the way down. And I think,
scale.
Yeah. And the lowest is shame and guilt and all this stuff. So if we rose and actually lived as a collective in those higher frequencies, they would not exist in our world. They can only exist in this bandwidth. And so they keep us there. And economically, they create poverty, they create scarcity, they create all of these things. They create disease. If you go look it up, you will find patents for cancer, for COVID, as I call it, for Ebola, for, all these different things, for cancer. So all these things are actually engineered. And if you know any history of the Rockefeller medical system, especially if you can find it, go read The Secret Covenant. It's pretty startling. They detail how they're going to keep us sick, profit off that, kill us early. And so all these systems are also a looshing, whether it's looshing our money. So taxation is a looshing of our labor. There's looshing on physical and etheric levels, but that's what loosh means. It's like feeding off of us.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Don't worry, we all called it COVID here. Elisa.
Well, that was a beautiful segue, because the question I was going to ask you, I guess it wasn't necessarily a pivot, was how do we destroy this and how do we get rid of it? And I think what you said, and I'm sure there's other things, I want to hear what you have to say, but is the frequency. And, listen, we all live in some way, right? There's something that frightens us or makes us afraid. But I guess the key is to be able to recognize that first, and then be able to actively raise your vibration and say, no, I'm going to live in the love. I'm going to tell myself I love you, and all these things that raise that. So, but how do we do this? I guess is the point, how do we do this on a mass level? Is part of it physical, whereby we need to kind of, when I say we, I mean the military and, the people that have more control than the average person, needs to go in and change ley lines and destroy satanic sites, and is that part of it? Is it part of it that people have to be educated about this? It's such a big undertaking.
Yeah. I think the two main things are if you want to change the world, you have to start with yourself. You have to do your trauma work. We're all traumatized one way or another if we're born in this reality, because it's based on trauma. So do therapy, do anything, do yoga, do whatever you need to do to address the wounding you have, because that wounding causes you to be somewhat dissociated, and then you can be easily mind controlled. And also, we all have mental programs. So we believe certain things, and we We have certain patterns, emotional patterns and behavioral patterns. Everyone's very reactive today, and that's by design. So you've got to heal yourself so you don't react constantly and fight with other people, because they want us divided. They divide us by race and gender and color and all this other stuff. So the first thing is to do your own healing work. Get your mind, get your emotions, get your body, feed your body nutritious food, get enough sleep, get exercise. It's kind of simple, but get yourself healthy. Then educate yourself. Today, so much information is out there. There's really no excuse to be ignorant anymore. So learn the truth about how the world works, right? Because truth is a frequency. So if you know the truth, you're also much more immune to being bamboozled and mind controlled and manipulated into doing something that's not good for you, like take a thing, that is a bioweapon. So the more you know, the safer you're going to be. And then once you do that, I think it's also the cult has done a lot to separate us from our divinity, from God, from that other part of ourselves that's outside of the body, or maybe the body's inside of it, whatever you want to look at it. But reconnect to who you really are, because that connection is so powerful. That alone will raise the frequency and the consciousness of every person, and then come together. And I have this feeling that everyone that's here came here for a mission, for a purpose, to contribute something. So if you clean yourself up, you connect, you'll start to be able to receive guidance as to, okay, why am I here on this planet? So, you guys are doing this podcast to educate people. And so find what it is to do that you're here to do, and start doing it, and then start working with other people. And I think even more maybe than trying to change the system is start to create a different system. Like, take your kids out of the public schools that are indoctrinating them and sexualizing them and not teaching them anything valuable, and start homeschooling, or start micro schools, or start communities, or same thing with food. Start a community garden, start growing things with your neighbors so you don't have to patronize corporations that sell you genetically modified food, right? Start a small business so people have options, and buy from other small businesses. Don't buy from the big corporates. So there's many ways that we can start to live differently, because we don't have to consent to them and their, evil systems. And because we do, we are perpetuating it, but we can withdraw, and especially in numbers. When one person tries, it's much harder than when a whole, mess of people rise up.
It's like a boycott.
Yeah. And because consent is implied, we can revoke it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that, do you think we're moving in the right direction?
Yes, I do. I think that they have always known that this time was coming. It's called the end times. It's the end of that war, that spiritual war that I think began when Lucifer fell. Because Lucifer originally, was a co-creator and was part of the divine plan, and all of that. So this time, and some people see it astrologically, or it's the Kali Yuga is over, and it's the age, the golden age, whatever you want to call it. It's a known time of transition, which helps facilitate the rise of consciousness. So it's almost like if you can ride the wave instead of being tumbled under it, we can go really far right now, because the energy is supporting us waking up, us rising up together, us creating something beautiful instead of this hell on earth. Because see, they use us to create the hell on earth reality we see outside of us now. They have mind controlled us into doing their dirty work and creating this stuff. So for example, Someone is flying the plane that's spraying the chemtrails over all of us, okay? Some doctor is injecting little babies. Some teacher is agreeing to teach the sexualized curriculum, etc. So we have to stop complying and consenting with their agenda, and we've been mind controlled to push it forward, right? So we can, if we withdraw that, we can put our energy towards creating something beautiful.
Definitely. What a lot of people don't realize is that if, you know, the biblical story and stuff, when Satan was cast down, this has been Satan's realm for all those hundreds of thousands of years, you know, and we're coming out the other side of that. There is a mass awakening now. Dark to light. Everything they used to do is hidden in the shadows. Now, Elisa and I believe Trump's involved in this military operation, and we've been watching this unfold for 10 years. But we are seeing these people really pushed into the light now, you know, with drag queens in schools and all the Hollywood singers and stuff like that covered in blood and all these demonic rituals live on stages and stuff. People are really waking up to it, and you have to believe that benevolence has taken control, and we are, you know, it's taken a long time, but we are certainly going to come out the other side of this, and it's all going to be exposed, and all these people are going to be arrested and taken down, no doubt, and all the children saved, I would have thought, as well.
Yeah. I think the only caveat there is that we need to be part of that change and that solution, because the Savior program is a cult program, and it's designed to keep you helpless and not doing anything and waiting for somebody else to come save you. So I'm always careful with that Savior program. Well,
it did tell us early on that this is a military civilian alliance. And Trump said in 2017 at the inauguration, it is not an unusual transition from one administration to next. We are giving power back to you, the people. And, you know, the people have got to take it. But, it's, you know, it said in the Q drops, a military civilian alliance. So whatever's happening with the military behind the scenes and Trump and all this stuff, the people have to rise to join them. We have to be a part of this. We are the plan. The people, you know, for people that say, oh, trust the plan and sit at home, we, the people, are the plan, which is why Elisa and I and yourself are doing this and getting as much information as we can to try and awaken others to join in the fight with us, you know?
Yeah, I think the problem is that we recognize that we've been mind controlled. You know, such a big percentage of people don't even know that. They just don't know what they don't know. And then when you try to explain, some people embrace it. They're like, wow, I got to digest this a little bit. Interesting. Tell me more. But there's so many people that become so angry, and, you know, it just goes to their core because it shakes their whole identity. Well, then who am I? What does this mean? What, you know, and that's really the hardest part of this, right? When we watch people that don't have, I guess, the capacity, the ability to look at a different possibility. You know,
like it's the pushback. When you get that pushback, it's someone who's deeply mind controlled, and they immediately react. They cannot take the information in and consider it. They absolutely must say, no, you're wrong. This is the way it is. I've tried to explain this, for example, with the woke program. That was a deliberate programming with the intent to normalize pedophilia in the end. Yeah. So it was piggybacked on the LGBTQ community. So a lot of people in that community would not want this program. But so, you know, no offense to anyone who's, you know, transgender or gay, but this is aimed at children. And that's where it's absolutely not acceptable. So they have socially engineered this whole, and, you know, Satanism is transgendered. So some of their gods are half male, half female, and it's an inversion of everything natural again. So they promote this because if you can make the public accept, it's moving the Overton window. If you can make the public accept a level of sexual depravity, then you're going to add the P on the end of that and say you can't offend pedophiles. They have a right too. So it's very sneaky and disgusting, but that's actually their ultimate agenda. These people do not care about trans people or Black people or any people. They're using different things in order to advance their agenda. And another part of that woke agenda was they actually fomented racism and all of this stuff so that when they released MK Ultra men, migrant men, into Western countries to destabilize them, if you say something about that, then you're a racist. Okay, now I don't care if those men were green, though. That's not refugees, that's not immigration, that's actually an army, probably trained under the ground, deliberately released to wreak havoc. And so then you can't say anything, and you can see what the response is, you know, in countries where lots of women are now getting raped, in the UK and Germany, you know, and then the response from the system, from the courts, is to let people walk, to accuse, you know, to not protect the people of that country, because they want to destroy everything, because you can only herd people into the next reset if you destroy the existing order, right? And Western countries still had a standard of life that was pretty decent, hence they're targeted. And it has nothing to do with skin color. It's a cult plan. Yeah. But people get really stuck. So when I say that, you have white privilege. And it's like, if you knew my story, you wouldn't say that, you know? I mean, sorry, no. I went through hell and back. But it's not about race, but the racial programming is so deep that the minute someone hears something, they go right to that division. They want us divided from each other very much, because if we unite against them, we're billions. They're not. Yep. Okay. So divide and conquer is a huge, effective program, and we need to get over it and come together.
Yeah. You can see it everywhere. Black versus white, Muslim versus Christian, gay versus straight, you know, everywhere. They have used this for generations.
Yes.
To get us to fight each other while they can further their agenda onwards.
Absolutely. They're using us all. They don't care about any of us. And by the way, when they say Black Lives Matter, they mean the Black nobility lives. So the Vatican is Black nobility, is Black sun. That's where most of the popes come from, that lineage. They're mocking us. They also like to mock us by saying things. And you know, so believe me, these people don't care about any people. So whatever people is the better people du jour and the bad people du jour, that's just them playing some games to divide and conquer us.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Maybe historically. So you talked about, the fall of Satan, but when did this all start or begin? Or, they talk about the 13 bloodlines. So are they related to off planet? Are they demons? Like, I always like to get to like the root cause, as opposed to where we are. How did it start? Where did it start? From where?
So obviously, I'm going to say what I've put together. I don't claim to know everything. We've been lied to about everything. So it's a little, you kind of have to hold knowledge loosely. But as far as I know from what I overheard and my experiences, if it's a pyramid, at the very top, it's Lucifer, and it's non-humans. It's Draco reptilians, it's mantids, and this again is a lot. It can blow some people's brains to bits, but they're non-human dark entities. Then the hierarchies go down and down and down. And at some point, I think that these families are hybrids. So they're a mix between humans and these non-humans. And if you look at Greek mythology, they have the gods raping the human women and creating the race of demigods, right? There's some version of that in different cultures too. I think that's describing what happened. So they have created, kings, right? And these elites were created as hybrids to then run the people below them. So they're very hierarchical and patriarchal, and they're dark at the top. And so then at the very bottom layer holding up the pyramid is us humans, and the layer above that looks down to us are governments. But there's many layers above. So everyone is getting orders from different layers above, and they have it very compartmentalized. And so, yeah, I think that these families are basically hybrids, and they're very protective of their bloodline. Yes. And in the royals, they have blue blood. I think they're mixed with reptilian. And I know many people who have seen some of them glitch and shapeshift. So I know, again, that sounds like some kind of crazy movie, but the truth is definitely stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
Have you seen Dylan Lewis Monroe's hierarchy pyramid that he made? Do you know Dylan, the map maker? He makes all the from the Deep State Mapping Project. If you haven't seen that,
no,
I'll email it to you after. You know, a lot of people say, why is this taking so long and stuff? If they understood the complexity of how many levels and secret societies and everything intermingled into this, going right up to the top of the pyramid, it blows you away. But I'll email that after to you.
Okay, yeah. And I think a lot of those top layers are no longer here. And that's the part of the spiritual war that's already been won. Yeah. So we're looking at the very lower layers at this point.
Which is very, very encouraging. You know, listen, I'm not an expert by any means, and I'm not necessarily what you'd call like, you know, someone who can channel or anything. I'm just kind of like an average, insightful person. But I felt a really definitive shift or feeling or lightness. Lightness is probably the best way. I don't mean the light. I mean like light, like not heavy. You know, going back about 5, 6 years ago, where it just felt different. Can't explain it. And so that might be exactly, now, is that when it happened? I don't know. It could have happened before, whatever, but it's very encouraging to think that that's true. And that now we're just left with sort of the lower level, but also we're our own worst enemy. You know, we have to get rid of that prison we've allowed ourselves to be put in, right? So, which is hard. You know, you've seen all those things where animals there's 100 of those examples, you know, when they're trained not to know the cover is off the jar and all that, and they won't go any higher. And that's the challenge right now, I guess, for people to awaken to their own divinity and their own strength and the power of their consciousness.
Yeah. But like you said, you can feel it. And see, I think we're going to get back a lot of abilities that are organically ours. We are telepathic. I mean, if you look at a dog or a cat, they understand each other or you without any speech, and they know a good person from a bad person. They'll react. We have a self-healing ability. We have the ability to move things with our minds. These are all things that have been children who get put through MK Ultra and this kind of thing can be trained in many of these abilities. They're real, and I think we all have them. We're going to recover these. And what you're feeling, in my opinion, I feel it too, is that you're feeling I used to sort of see it, you know, with my third eye, this spider webby veil across the planet. It's an oppression. It's a way to separate us from that contact that we can have from downloading, from knowing, from guidance. And that's gone. I don't see it anymore. So I think it is lighter. And I think more of God, of light, of organic reality it's coming through. The matrix is cracking. So we're going to feel it more and more and more. It's a done deal. Their matrix is going down. There is no doubt about that in my mind. I know it in my bones. You know, sometimes you just know stuff. And I think that's why we're here and why we came here, because we wanted to have a front row seat to the liberation of Earth. Now, it could go much faster if more of us were on board and were assisting. But I definitely think what you're feeling is real. And right now, lately, some days it's really turbulent also, because I think they're, you know, as they're circling the drain, they're lashing out. It's like the dying beast is thrashing and lashing. So there's a lot of people that are triggered, that are, there's a lot of craziness, but at the same time, it's a disintegration of the system as it was. And some people are going to have a really hard time because, like you said earlier, they don't have a clue what's going on. They don't even understand. They have bought into the movie, the fake story of reality that we're not very much in anymore. So that's going to be tough, but those of us who have made it a little further will help. We're here to help guide them.
And you hear it every day. Like, people look at, I'll just use age as an example. Like, you're programmed to think you're old.
Yes.
Or you're getting old. Like, I had a friend who said to me a couple of years ago, he's like, well, you really should be doing this because you're, in your 50s. And I was like, but I'm fine. Like, but that's the mentality. And then I look at, contemporaries my age, early 60s, and I look at them and they're going to doctors and they're taking this and they're doing that. And like, I channel every day that I'm 35, it's like, I believe it. Sometimes when I have to look at my birth date, I'm like, I have like a cognitive dissonance. But the point is, we've been programmed to think, to shorten our lifespan and to give up and that's a tough one. People are going to have, a tough time realizing they can be fairly ageless.
Yeah, that is it's artificial. We're not supposed to age the way that we do. And a lot of it's the toxicity that they've created in our environment. But a lot of it's also just a mind control, an idea that, and particularly in America, it's like, you're on the couch and you're barely mobile. I mean, I'm going to be 62 in a couple of days. And I mean, no, I'm not going to be old. I don't care how old I am. I work out, I walk, I think, I learn. It's a spell that we don't have to put ourselves under. And one of the agendas of this is, it's only after age 50 that you start to enter the age of wisdom. So actually, a whole society of people between 50 and 100 would be so powerful for the whole planet, because you've achieved wisdom. You've achieved a level of spirituality. You can lead, you can teach, so it's dangerous to have people. It's an organic development. So, in psychology, they have development until you're like 21 or something. But no, that keeps going. And at that age, you achieve a much higher level spiritually, mentally, wisdom-wise. They don't want that. So they make it old seem useless and rubbish and throw away and park you in a nursing home, because that takes that wisdom offline. It takes a long time for us to reach that. And because you're around that age yourself, what happens after that? Like, so you look back and you go, oh my God, I was so foolish when I was young. I mean, you see things so differently. It's the irony is that you have achieved a level of self-love and self-worth and wisdom while in an older body. And when you're young, you have the young body, but you don't have any of that. So it's kind of interestingly paradoxical. But that's part of the agenda. They don't want elders.
Yeah.
Okay. They don't want elders.
It's really funny. You said it in a very psychological, like fact-based. What I always say is we are so meant, I don't know what the truth is and all that, but like feeling like we need to live to at least a couple of 100 years old, because you only start to have wisdom and understanding when you hit like your 50s. Like, you can feel that, like you said, like you don't want to hate yourself for things you did or anything like that, but you're like, wow. And you feel like, if I can only go back, if I could go back with this mind and this understanding and this spirituality and start again when I was 20, what the things, I could do and achieve. But that's the whole point. It's like, how could we possibly be meant to only live to 70, 80 when there's so much you could do? And like, look at some of the people. I just gave a public discussion about this. And I was saying, look at the things that people have achieved at an older age, right? Like I'll just give one example, like Louise Hay, you know, she wanted to start a publishing company when she was 65, and everybody was like, "You're so old. Why would you do that?" And she started Hay House, you know, with probably one of the foremost for, you know, esoteric and spiritual publications. And she lived to like 95. I mean, first of all, she was beautiful to the end, but this is the thing. And I can name a whole bunch of other people. So what are you supposed to do? Well, maybe you've already born your children if you have them, you know, maybe you do, but now it's like all this creativity and stuff that you could do at this age that really has an impact on the world.
Yeah. And, you know, there's also the factor of us having been genetically modified by them in you know, in the past to live shorter lifespans for that very reason. You know, I think if you look at sort of biblical stuff, they're living 800 or 900 years. Well, I think that used to be the case.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I agree.
I actually think we would achieve wisdom much earlier than 50 if we lived in a world where we weren't lied to perpetually and we lived in the world of truth. You know, if we lived in a completely different world, people would be achieving this wisdom at 20 and 30 years of age, wouldn't they? Because we'd all be spiritual, we'd all be telepathic, we'd all, you know, living in a completely different way, eating better food. We wouldn't be poisoned all the time from the air, from the sky, from the water. You know, everything that they've been doing us now for decades, you know.
Yeah. And I like to think that maybe some of that is in process, like a lot of those changes. I mean, again, I'm not a scientist, but I look at the grass. It didn't look like this 5 years ago. You know, it wasn't as lush, at least where I am on Long Island in New York. Just a lot of things. Like I remember when I was a little kid and you had certain weeds, you had the dandelions and you had the little tiny, and they were just gone. They were just gone for decades. And now like you're seeing them pop up. Well, maybe they're not weeds, you know, maybe they're meant to be there. And so I like to think that a lot of the stuff has, maybe even during COVID, they use that as cover, because when the supermarket shelves were bare, were they really bare because the trucks couldn't get through? Were they destroying all the shit that was meant to kill us, you know, and all the food processing plants blowing up and the animals? Oh my God, you know, 2,000, whatever they were, cattle just fell over. You know, I like to think that maybe in spite of people not knowing a lot of this and not knowing what was done to them, that they were, you know, that there were some good people that were trying to make these changes and then expose what was and what, you know, so people think it really is. So they become more aware, you know, like organic and all this kind of stuff. And it's absurd that we have to buy organic. Everything should be organic.
Yeah.
That should not be a label. That should be the normal.
Yes.
Yeah. But they want us to remain ignorant, you know, and they want us. So yeah, no, I fully agree with everything you just said.
Yeah. And we have to, I think even if it's not 100% that way, or it's still in the process, like we have to manifest that by thinking that, and it'll start to happen. Like even with like the chemtrails, you know, how are you going to educate? Stu always says, how do you educate someone on chemtrails if you don't see something? Does that mean they're still spraying us with bad stuff? I don't know, but they think we're crazy, right? All these things we've been saying for decades to people, and we're just labeled as conspiracy theorists and nuts. But, you know, I think a society is also judged by how we treat, right, our children and our animals. And so I think there's a lot to be said about the executive order against harming animals now, and, you know, that it's a felony, because we have to start making those things happen. And I don't believe those things could be happening if some of the dark wasn't already gone, you know, like that now we can replace and get people to recognize, because I think that's just, to me, that's going to be a little segue into getting rid of factory farming, you know, an evil, horrible practice, which is really, if you think about it, it's so satanic. I mean, it's
satanic. Yeah, it's satanic, and it's about globalization, because they've wanted, their agenda is a one world, unelected global government. They don't want nations. I mean, they revealed that agenda in the Hunger Games. So that was interesting when I saw that movie. So yeah, no. And, you know, maybe for a while you'll need laws because people have been so devolved that they will do horrible things. But eventually we will get to a point where no one would hurt an animal or another human or a child. Like that's I see a world where that's the normal, the natural. So anything outside of love and peace and abundance and light and joy is the unnatural thing. Yeah. But we've lived in an inverted reality where the natural is the dark and the satanic. And like you said earlier, Stu, it's in our face. I mean, they aren't trying to hide that Satanism anymore. I used to say this years ago and people would say, oh, that's crazy. Well, I mean, have you seen the Hollywood? Have you seen the movies? Have you seen the music videos? And like you said, the horns and the blood and it's right there in our face. They've engineered society slowly over decades. So for example, in the 50s or 40s or 50s, you know, men had to court women. They had to have prospects. They had to be kind and, you know, and people got married and they had children and they've wanted to destroy the family and they've wanted to socially engineer us to today. You meet someone in a bar and an hour later you're in bed with them and you don't even know their name. That's satanic. Yeah. That's satanic. That's taking something like sexuality, which is physical, but also spiritual and sacred, and devolving it into its absolute lowest common denominator, which isn't what it could be and isn't good for us, you know? So that's what they've done with everything.
Yeah. I mean, we look into this so much that it is so in your faces now. It's almost, you can't say that these Kabbalists are still in control of their operations, you know, because it is so in your face. Now, we have heard that the 13 bloodline families were taken down on Christmas Eve 2016, I think. Trump did that speech in 2017 with the military standing behind him. He did his capitulation tour around the world, and we have seen these things unfold for years now. Trump was writing executive orders as soon as he got in for rescuing children and human trafficking and all this stuff. We have seen so much stuff to the positive that you can't take down a 6,000-year-old death cult in 10 minutes, especially if you need all the public on board. They have to wake up, and it's an organic awakening. You just can't come in and save people. They have to save themselves. That is their free will. When we all rise collectively, I've said to people all the time, if everyone walks outside their house now in mass non-compliance, so we're not doing it anymore, we're not paying taxes, we're not playing your game, not doing it, it's game over, there and then. But people will not do it. They will not unite yet. So there's still a lot of waking up to do, but we are seeing so much to the positive, and these globalists are right in the crosshairs. Everyone can see them now. Everyone knows who the World Economic Forum is, you know.
Yeah. No, I've never seen, I didn't think I'd see it in my lifetime that the word deep state became part of common vernacular, or that MK Ultra was, everybody knew what that was. So a lot has changed fairly quickly in the last, you know, COVID actually, ironically, I think God always has a sense of humor. It actually caused a lot of people to wake up, and a lot of people to distrust the medical system and vaccines, which needs to happen because they're all terrible. So I think, you know, when they tried to crush the global food supply, people started growing their own. And so everything they do is because the energetic is shifting, and because the matrix is dissolving, it's actually backfiring on them and waking more people up. So I find that somewhat amusing.
Yeah, that's like an inevitability. The more they do, it doesn't matter what they do, right? There is only one goal we're moving to, and that is this mass global awakening and their demise. It can't happen soon enough for me, and it's taken a long time, as we've, you know, Elisa and I have been doing this almost 25 years, trying to wake people up individually, and, you know, for the last 8 months together. But we can see it. We are very, very positive. You know, and COVID, Mark Atwood says COVID was the best thing to ever happen to humanity. That awoken so many people. And just another thing about being truthers for a long, long time before COVID. When COVID happened, we have been learning about all these cults and the Bible and everything for years, and 9/11 and stuff. But when that happened, the people that have been awake for a long time really started concentrating on their health and distilling their own water and eating more salt. And I could go on and on and on about all these things we've been doing to better our health and not go to the hospital and, you know, look for your own things and stuff.
Yeah, it's so funny too, because like, you know, I don't know how you are, Max, but like, I'll just go to the store and someone will, you know, you have a conversation, you're waiting online, whatever. And people, you know, like this one woman was saying, oh, I can't order that. You know, I have to watch my salt. And I started like telling her, like, you know, like you can't hold it in. I guess that's my point. You know, you can walk away and you could like just go, oh, okay, have a nice day. But I'm like, well, you know, dear, I was like, salt really isn't that bad for us. You know, like, what do they do when you go to the hospital? What is the first thing they hook you up to? She was like, saline? I was like, yeah, just something to think about, you know, have a nice day. So like, I think those of us that are awake, like it's almost like, I hate to say it's like vomit, like you can't hold it in. Wherever you go, you have to share something. You have to tell someone, you have to, and you know, sometimes it makes a difference, right? You get into a little conversation or someone's eyes perk up. And then other times they look at you like you're crazy, or they argue you know, because they're so stuck. And then I just walk away and just say a prayer. Like maybe it'll come to, like, maybe they'll see it in a few days or, you know, later on. But you're right. It's like we all need to kind of rise together. Now, tell us more about what you're doing now. And for someone who had such, you know, a horrific experience, how did you break away? Like that must have just, I can't even imagine, like, how did you break away? And then how did you get into the field you're in of healing people?
Well, I think most people that go into psychology are looking to heal themselves. So that's pretty standard. It was a confluence of factors. I was always intended to come to the United States for university. So that was something that was laid in the works by my father, and I don't think could be overridden. But also I got to a point when I was between 17, I graduated high school at 17, almost 18. And there was a ritual that they had done, and I snapped because they had been torturing a sibling of mine to try and get me to do things. And I just drew a line. Some kind of voice came out of me and just said, I'm done. It's enough. No, you know, you will not touch my siblings anymore, and you will not touch me anymore. And some kind of power filled me, and I just said no more. And the thing is, they train us to be weapons, right? They train us in certain things, and they hope that you obey them so that they can use that training for their purposes. But what happens when you stand up and push back? They often just back off and let you go because, you know, there are things, you know, that we were trained to do. So for a confluence of factors, I was let go. And I came to the US and I went to school, and at first I was wild because I had never lived. I was like, oh my God, I'm free. I'm not being constantly tortured. And so I just was living as much of life as I could. I was partying, I was dancing, I was going to school, I was working, I really threw myself into life. And that's not to say the trauma wasn't there, but I sort of pushed everything down for a while in my 20s because I think I just needed to exist without it, you know, not being in this hell. Eventually, you know, it started to catch up, and I went, after I got my first degree, I went and I started working in mental health. So I worked in a psych hospital, and then I worked in the inner city in DC where I lived for a while, with people who were traumatized and homeless, and some were addicts. I ran a batterers program for Arlington County when I was there. So I did men's groups. So I started to work with perpetrators a little bit. So I worked with victims and perpetrators of trauma. Then I ended up going back to school. I got my master's, and then I came to the West Coast of the United States, to San Francisco, for my doctoral program, and I was working there as well. I worked in the prisons, worked in the San Francisco jail mental health unit. So I always was doing something related to trauma, and that itself was a path back for me, because there were so many times that I was forced to witness the torture and slow death of others, including animals, that to be able to help people and to do something helped my own trauma. And then I got into therapy, and once I got married and had a child, it sort of opened the vault of the more repressed memories. I had been impregnated as a teenager. They had aborted the babies almost at term and then sacrificed them in front of me. So I had so having a child brought up some of those more embedded traumatic memories. And I just did a deep dive for like 10 years. It was pretty brutal. I wanted to kill myself. I'm not going to lie. The pain of having to, kind of process all of this stuff, because to survive, you pack it away and you put it in little boxes, and then you just keep going. And at some point, to really become free, you have to unpack it. You have to heal it. And so I did that. And because I had a child and I loved that child more than life itself, that's what gave me the strength to keep going. And I did it. It was a long and painful process, but I basically, I did what they call the inner work, the shadow work, the healing work. And I started to do things like I started to do kickboxing, which I did for like 20 years. And that was very empowering for my body, which had never been able to fight back, to begin to fight. So I was finding healing in all these different, ways. And I quit working when I had my child because I wanted to do the job of mother. I live and let live, but I personally believe we should not bring a child into the world unless we're going to be there to raise it. So I wanted, and plus I wouldn't have never trusted anyone else with my child after what I went through. So I had the most healing experience being a mother, because I got to give my child the childhood I never had. And it's like I gave it to myself, and that love, and that, if anyone who's had children, they're the pure version of who we really are, And so I really lived that experience of raising a child, and that healed me. And then came a point in time when I was, aware, even when I was going through my therapy, luckily my therapist had heard of ritual abuse, because I didn't have a name for it. I just knew what I had been through. So then I started to realize, how many children get trafficked. And I was angry, and I was saying, God, like, WTF, like, this can't continue. And kind of the download, what I heard was, well, then do something, So I decided at that point to start telling my story. That was like 5 or 6 years ago. And so I just started telling my story. And then I created my website, unbroken.global, because we're all broken, but we can unbreak ourselves, right? And then I started to interview people who were teachers and healers and whistleblowers of every part of survivors, or someone who had worked in whatever. So I began to put out information and truth. And then I've always worked as a therapist, and I started to work with survivors, specifically of, what I went through, survivors of violence and trauma, which is a very specific thing. And then I decided to I've done quite a few seminars because they're short, they're like 2 hours on different topics that people might want to learn. So I did one where I exposed the Vatican for who they are. I did one explaining what satanic ritual abuse is. I've done seminars on how to, exit the matrix, how to co-create a better way forward. What's our real history? So I like doing those. I think they're a good way to, it's almost like you take a class, but it's just a one-time seminar. And then because of, I'm sure what you've experienced, this lack of people that are awake, I created a community through Unbroken, and there's people from every country in the world. There's a woman from Korea, there's people from Australia, from the US, from everywhere. And we get together once a month on Zooms so people can become members. And we just, we talk about whatever's going on in the world, and we share information. And it's just such a nice space to be with other people who, know what's going on. And so as I do more, I think of more things that I can do. So who knows what I'll do next. I do want to promote a conference that I'm speaking at in UK in September, the GSIC conference, the Galactic Spiritual Informers Conference. I think David Icke and Billy Carson and many others, and Kathy O'Brien, who's a very dear friend of mine and an MK Ultra survivor, will be speaking. And so I think it's just that combination, that perfect combination of doing, so I'm a healer, I help people do that healing path, and I want to spread the truth. And I think those two things are what's really going to change the world.
Yeah, beautifully said. I think like when you talk about violence and like growing up in that, and of course there's levels in the sense, like what you went through was the ultimate extreme of that type of thing. But, like for instance, myself, I grew up in a little bit of a violent household, and you have to do the healing. I remember I was in my like 30s when it kind of hit, and I was relating to a lot of what you're saying. You do feel a little suicidal when it hits you, but I remember that I said, I'm, in my mid 30s, like, why is this coming up now? And he said, well, if it was this easy, you would have resolved it at 17. Like, it's not easy stuff, So I think that is probably something that people have also been trained that, well, it's not that bad. And you just have to, and I'm not saying you stay a victim. I'm not saying that at all, but if you don't do that work, whatever that trauma might be for people, some people wear the badge their whole life, and that doesn't do themselves, their family, or their friends and the world any good. But you do have to have that, I don't know what to call it, like breakdown, to have breakthrough in order to heal. And it's generational healing, because you can see how maybe it goes back. Like my family wasn't a cult, but there was a lot of generational bad things. And so you want to stop it, right? Especially when you become a mother, you start to say like, this has to stop. And hopefully I am enlightened enough to maybe they can be different. Like it's that pattern ends and we move forward in a better way. But you're right. A lot of people are afraid, or they've been programmed that you're weak if you get upset. You just have to kind of be tough about it. And it's very sad because that healing really raises the vibration too, all around.
Yes, it's one of the most important things we can all do.
Yeah. Yeah. So when is the conference? What's the date on it that's happening in the UK?
It's the 9th through the 12th
of
September.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful.
So people just go look up GSIC or Galactic Spiritual Informers Conference. So it's a really good lineup. I spoke at it last year. It was in North Carolina. And it's any of these spaces are such good spaces to get inspired and to learn from people. We're all learning and we're teaching at the same time. We're healing and we're helping others heal. That's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
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 Beautiful. Well, we could end it. That was a nice place to end, really. I've just got a couple more. I don't really want to go back, but while we've got you here, I've got a couple more things written down here, because I heard you say in a previous interview you were talking about birth certificates and the CPS and stuff, and people don't understand their involvement and all this.
Yeah, so I did a little bit of a dive into that rabbit hole many years ago, and then I interviewed a guy that really explained it well, and it's a free interview on my website. He goes by Mr. Beneficiary. So basically, the Vatican is behind the ownership of our souls. So they're behind birth certificates. But the scheme is that when you register your child's birth, you're basically giving your child over to the state. So because everything is commerce, it's like we have to have, if you play Monopoly, you have to have a game piece, right? Like the little car or the whatever. And so that when to play the game of commerce, you need this thing they call the straw man. It's like a game piece. So there's you, the living person, and then there's the entity that you use to engage in all kinds of commerce. Now, the trick is that you're supposed to own that. It's yours. But when you sign your child into a birth certificate, you're giving the state the control over their straw man, right? And so you're no longer the beneficiary of things. You're the I forget what the other word is, the trustee, I think it is. So basically, that's the trick. So if you've signed your child over and they own your child's straw man, they can't really own your child, but they can own the straw man. Then CPS can come and take that child from you. But if you never signed it over to the state, they would not be able to do that. So it's a very sneaky, tricky system. And it's the same with taxes. You're technically volunteering to pay them because, by the way, the IRS is not a government agency. It's a private corporation. So you might as well be giving a third of your paycheck to Walmart. It's exactly. All very tricky. And then when you go to court, they count on you not knowing. So if they ask you 3 times if you are John Smith and you say you are, you're now giving them the right to, they're the beneficiary because you're saying that you're the straw man. You should be saying, I'm the beneficiary. I'm the owner of this corporate entity, my all caps name that I use in this game of commerce. It's very deep. It's very complicated, and you really have to learn it. But what I learned from this guy is that there's always a way out. So it's all implied. You're all implied consenting to this until you revoke consent, but you can revoke consent. And there's a process that he teaches in his class, which I still want to take, where you send your birth certificate to the State Department and somewhere else, and you take back your ownership of your own straw man. And then you're technically what people call sovereign. But people get very mixed up about this, and the cops stop them and they say, I'm a sovereign, and they get arrested, because you really have to do this process very well. You have to know what you're doing, but it can be done. You can take yourself out of this system and own your own game piece and engage as you will with yourself as the beneficiary. And then you're not liable for anything anymore.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be able to teach a class in it. I'm not versed enough. I know enough to understand what it is, but I don't know enough to, coach someone on how to do it. And I would never dare. But one thing he said was very interesting. He said that, there didn't used to be birth certificates. And at one point in the United States, they were offering women a free paid week of vacation if they signed up their child for a birth certificate. So a lot of women did that. In the act of doing so, they were accepting the benefit, therefore entering into a contract that they were obligated now to uphold. So it's even, he explained it, it's on the tax form. If they offer you an itemized deduction or a standardized deduction, if you take either one, you're accepting their offer. It's an offer. Oh, I'll take that. Now you've entered into contract with this agency, and now you're beholden to it. But there's always a way to extricate yourself. And I think that might be something that as the world awakens, we learn more and more about, and we all can sort of extricate ourselves from.
Yeah, because the other part of that, and again, like you, I know just enough to have a conversation. But they also trade us, and they issue bonds when we get licenses, and whatever that is, a fishing license, a marriage license, a divorce decree, whatever thing we do with the state, and so they've got a fund that they're trading us that we're all worth, who knows, hundreds of millions. I mean, so it's such a, now the fact that that's all coming out so deliberately and more, prevalent tells me, right? Because they always have their systems of keeping all this stuff secret. We never knew it till recently that the good guys are in control, because, you can search and dig, right? But the prevalence that all of this is coming out for everybody to see, you know that the control mechanisms are going away. And so it's unbelievable. And I only found out about this a few years ago, like right after COVID, but it was shocking when I heard it, but I was like, yeah, okay. It doesn't surprise me. It's shocking to know, but now we got to start digging and most people you talk to, accountants, lawyers, they don't even know that the Fed isn't part of the government.
Right. Yeah. And, you can find yourself, and you can find everything on Dun & Bradstreet. You go look it up. So I found Congress, the Senate, the IRS. It's a register of corporations. And you can find yourself on there, and you can find the amount, like you just said, that you're being traded for. It's very interesting.
Dun & Bradstreet?
Yes. DUNN and Bradstreet.
Yeah, I remember that was a big, when you wanted to get like a dossier, going back to my corporate days, we use that all the time. But I didn't we're corporations, right? So it makes sense.
Well, the United States is currently a corporation. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, we used to have a website, and I don't know if it was global, actually. It was called, I think it was GMEI Utility. You used to be able to go on there in the UK, put your national insurance number, and you could see all the companies that were traded on you. It's obviously been shut down now, but I was blown away when I was going through mine. It was like crazy stuff.
It's all hidden in plain sight, all of it.
Yeah.
You just have to open your eyes and start to see.
Yes, exactly. So, I just got one last thing. We've all really researched adrenochrome and stuff, but have you had any experience of that in your childhood or anything?
Well, yeah. What I saw underneath the Vatican was a ritual of blood drinking, and the reason they brutalize the children first is so that the adrenaline is released into the bloodstream. It's like an elixir of youth to them. They're now saying it pretty openly also. And so they sell it as well. And there will be, I have seen lists where there's the age of a child, the race of the child, the gender of the child, and the quality of the adrenochrome. So class A, it's more expensive. B. So this is sold on the black market, and these people are vampiric and cannibalistic. So they eat human flesh. I've seen babies brought out, cooked on platters. So when they have that Marina Abramovich, thing where she has like a fake cake of a human body, well, they do that really too. So, so adrenochrome is adrenalized blood. And so it's all a big satanic thing, but it's also something that they do to maintain youth and this kind of thing. Yeah, it's very sick. These are very sick and twisted people.
Well, let's not also forget that it's also a money-making venture, because it that kind of money is also funding all the other sick things they're doing. So, I mean, we also have to look at the that aspect of it,
Yes. Child trafficking and war are the two highest grossing industries on the planet. And wars are created by them. Both sides are funded. It's a scheme. It's a game. And so, but the trafficking of children is a very high grossing industry. It's really, the amount of children trafficked globally is shocking.
Yeah. Figures are shocking. Well, I mean, the official figures they give us, aren't they? How true they are, but this is governmental figures and stuff. 8 million children a year, 22,000 every day go missing, whether they come back and stuff or not. But I think, they've got to generate these children to carry on doing what they're doing, and
that's even count the ones they have women. If you 6 months ago or so, somebody finally persuaded me to watch this show, Stranger Things, and I was shocked about how much disclosure was in that, including the scene we had the pregnant women under the ground chained to these beds. That is real. They have young women underground in all these different places that they use to breed children. So you're not even counting the missing children, but you're not counting the children bred who will never have a birth certificate and never be known to exist in the world. And those are used for sacrifice and horrible rituals and all kinds of other stuff. So there's that additionally. And I don't know how many millions that would be.
Well, we've all been tracking Gene Decode and others, and looking at all these seismic activity, and we do hope this whiteout operation has been clearing out all these dumps and used a lot of COVID actually to lock down a lot of places around the world. And we're doing military operations, taking them all down underground while that was going on as a bit of a cover, really. So we are hopeful it is all being cleared up.
Yeah,
sure.
Well along, because, here in, I don't know how it is necessarily in Europe, but in the States, and of course we're all global now to be able to see all this, but they're taking down rings of, trafficking rings and arresting people and putting it out there in the in the public more. And I guess the good thing is that I don't know how old your child is, but mine are 19 and 22, and they're so much more aware. Like, when I talk to someone my age who's unawakened and you say some of these things, they're like, they don't know how to kind of process it. But the young, they know about trafficking, and they know, and I think that's good, because they have an awareness factor about this stuff that they can, I mean, if we had like a weird teacher, he was like a weirdo. But when they talk, they're like, that guy's a pedophile and they had to get rid of him. Like, they even know the terminology to be able to understand and have a conversation and call it the way it is, which I think is very good, because that awareness will enable it, God willing, for them not to be mind controlled the same way the older generations were, because we didn't know, it was hidden, whatever. So to me, that's a good thing,
Yeah. I envision a world where children will be in a classroom learning history and they'll say, that used to happen on Earth, but it won't anymore.
They won't even need to say it to each other. They'll just think it.
Yeah, well, right.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of that little volunteers video. I don't know if you've seen that, have you, with the two girls talking telepathically?
Yes. Yes. I think that's what we will evolve towards, because with language you can lie, but when you're telepathic and you read people, you can't, there's no lying anymore.
Yeah. Well, Max, this has just been so incredible, and you're just so brave, and to just be go on shows and educate people, and then of course the work that you do privately, to help people to heal. Just a real gift to humanity. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I always appreciate the opportunity to, try and speak out and spread truth and light. So I appreciate what you both do as well.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So, I mean, if anyone wants to go to Max's site, go to unbroken.global. She's got it there under her name anyway. There's lots of information on here. That's great. I want to say have a very merry Born Day in a couple of days, Max. And just thank you so much for coming on. Do keep doing the work you're doing. We'll do what we're doing. We've got Kathy O'Brien and Mark Abrams are coming on next week on our Monday Respect. So it's going to be great. And yeah, amazing courage. Lots of love.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us in the chat, and we will see you tomorrow. And we'll play a little outro now. Take care. Thank you, Max.
Children are the center of our world, and we do our best to show them that we care. But evil is lurking everywhere to steal their youth, kill their soul, show them things that they should never know. We live in the craziest of times, you never know what's in another's mind. We keep them safe, protect from bad, but they just choose to make them sad and keep their evil rituals alive. Who saves the children? We do, we do. Who keeps them safe and warm and so secure? We do, we do. Who saves the children? We do, we do. And we'll fight to death to keep it safe for you. We'll fight for what's right with all of our might, and we won't leave one single child behind. They've been here since the dawn of time, and their actions take a twisted mind. But we won't stand no more. We'll track them down for sure and make sure that they are gone forevermore. Why can't you see the crimes committed on our kids by the powers that be? How long do we wait? How many must die? How many loving parents need to cry? Who saves the children? We do, we do. Who keeps them safe and warm and so secure? We do, we do, we do. We do, we do. Who saves the children? We do, we do. And we'll fight to death to keep it safe for you. We'll fight for what's right with all of our might, and we won't leave one single child behind. Who keeps them safe and warm and so secure? We do, we do, we do, we do, we do. We do, we do. Who saves the children?